2:05 p.m. on Thursday, the 29th of February, 2024. We are meeting in person in the Council Hearing Room 412 and virtually via Zoom to convene the committee's final public oversight hearing of 2024, which is also streamed and recorded on the committee's YouTube channel named EAL Committee. And so today we are starting our hearing from the Executive Office of the Mayor. The purpose of the hearing is to receive public and government witness testimony regarding the performance of the Executive Office of the Mayor for fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 to date. I ask that public witnesses keep your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Having said that, I would like to note that your entire written testimony will be a part of the record. So if you have not submitted it, please email it to the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor at ceal@dccouncil.gov. Today, we want to get a better understanding of what the EOM has accomplished over this past year and identify areas of success and areas for improvement. We know that the EOM contains or is the mayor's office, and that is a critical part of our government. So hearing from the mayor's office today is very, very crucial to the continuation of our government and where we're going as we are recovering from past years, including the COVID. These oversight hearings are also an opportunity to evaluate how we can be a more equitable DC, where every resident can live up to their full potential. At this time, do I have any colleagues? All right, okay. So thank you very much. And I'll just very quickly go through the mission of the Executive Office of the Mayor. As we all know, is to serve the public by supporting the mayor in governing, including through constituent engagement and media relations. The office is responsible for vision and policy direction and provides the agencies with leadership, support, and oversight to implement specific goals and objectives. The agency's FY24 operating budget is almost $22 million and includes approximately 149 full-time staffers or FTEs. Of course, the office is led by the mayor's chief of staff, Lindsay Parker, who will present testimony on the EOM's performance today. And I want to thank Ms. Parker for being here with us and look forward to receiving her testimony along with the testimony from our public witnesses. And now we will proceed with our public witnesses. And I believe our first witness, it's already in the room, Mr. David Maloff, who is today a public witness. Mr. Maloff, we'll start with you.
Councilmember Bonds, thank you very much for holding this hearing. I am David Maloff, a 41-year proud citizen of the district and past president of the DC Federation of Citizens Associations. At that time, an umbrella group of about 24 neighborhood civic citizens and community groups around the district. I've testified many times, and I've got 30 years of management consulting experience. I guess that's seasoned under my belt. So I know what to look for within our government. And for 17 months, I've been looking closely and with great concern at the Department of Buildings. I know we have a new department now that was once a troubled DCRA, but after 17 months, I think it's time to do an independent, inside the government, but outside of the stovepipe of DOB, non-audit review of the agency. And I would recommend that about 6 people be assigned on a temporary basis, no more than 3 weeks, maybe a little longer if you make it only a little bit of time every day. And I think a report checklist of powerful things that need to be tracked more actively and fixed for the director, Mr. Hanlon, and for council members and for the deputy mayor to walk around with and say, how are we doing? to be a part of the end result of this process. I would second to temporarily assign 6 talented people, probably 3 senior, 3 more junior from the DC auditor, the deputy mayor of infrastructure, of operations and infrastructure, which I hesitate to call DEMWA, as some do, the mayor's office of legal counsel, because the general counsel's office is very troubled within the DOB department, the office of risk management, the office of the city administrator, and the executive office of the mayor. And all those people can then report back to their offices on how the project's going. No secrets, all honest, open, and positive to fix the agency. About 24 interviews. Yes, those could be confidential with top managers, together with someone sitting down and reviewing the last 5 very painful testimonies at the council to write down a list of what's broken, the flip side of which, of course, is what needs to be fixed. Mr. Mendelson last week had 38 people signed up. So there's plenty of videotape to write down, put on an Excel spreadsheet, and track. It's time to create an independent report. It can be done in under 2 months. And I think that you don't need to hire Booz Allen to do it. Very inexpensive, and I think insightful for everyone, and supportive of the agency that I think is insular and reluctant to speak up increasingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And I will get back to you if you will stay with us for a minute. Next, we're going to hear from Michael Haviland.
Hello,
right.
Councilmember Bonds.
Hello, how are you? Welcome.
Doing well. Hope you're doing well as well. I'm not exactly an expert in what I'm about to testify about, but I do have family and friends that don't always feel included in the city, so I'm testifying about it. I also reached out to an at-large council member, and they told me that this was the appropriate executive agency and committee for this kind of thing. I would like to talk about and make a request about how this government determines which international tragedies it's going to express condemnation of and which international struggles it shows support for. We are a city. Most of what we do is not international. When it comes to international affairs, the most we can do are acts of symbolism, but that symbolism is powerful, and at times we use it. DC is an important place. Overall, my testimony is asking and hoping that DC government can be more inclusive in these symbols of support. When Russia violently invaded Ukraine a few years ago, Mayor Bowser was quick to adorn the city in Ukrainian flags and lighting, and rightfully so. We should condemn authoritarian regimes, violent invasions, and violations of international law. It was great that the mayor and the council spread the Ukrainian colors of yellow and blue throughout this city. I'm glad that my tax dollars supported this. Or this past October, when the terrorist organization Hamas attacked Israel, killing so many innocent people. Bowser and his council were quick to light up the Wilson Building in the national colors of Israel. I'm also glad that my tax dollars supported this. But there are 2 other global tragedies that haven't been supported in the same way. In 2022, Iranian activist Mahsa Amini was brutally slaughtered for showing her hair. It sparked a global movement calling for women, life, and freedom in the country of Iran, including here in DC, where thousands marched tirelessly every weekend right next to the Wilson Building. Did Mayor Bowser adorn the Wilson Building in red, yellow, and green to show support for the people of Iran? No, she did not, and I know for a fact that many Iranian Americans living in DC asked her to do so. Or another example, the genocide happening right now in Palestine, perpetuated by the government of Israel. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have been slaughtered in just a few months, and this genocide has sparked global outcry, including right here in DC, where many Palestinian Americans live. Did Bowser color the city in black, green, and red? No, she did not. We need to be voices of democracy, human rights, and justice, regardless of what the leadership of the National Democratic Party thinks. If Mayor Bowser was using her campaign funds to pay for this stuff, it would be totally irrelevant what I think. But these are our tax dollars, and they should be used in an inclusive and even-handed manner. So I conclude my testimony with two questions. What process does the mayor use to determine which international struggles and tragedies merit the tax dollars and symbolism I mentioned? And second, will the mayor offer symbolic support to the people of Iran and people of Palestine in their fight for freedom and justice at these times of tragedy? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Now we will hear from Huma Emitis, who is
Thank you, Council
Commissioner.
Member.
All right. She is a Commissioner 5E04.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. And thank you, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify at this oversight hearing. My name is Huma Imtiaz. I am the Commissioner for Single Member District 5E04 in ANC 5E, which covers parts of Bloomingdale and Edgewood and Ward 5. This February will mark 14 months since I took office as a commissioner. And the lesson I have learned the hard way is that the agency dysfunction that we deal with, both as commissioners and as residents of the district, is directly linked to the mayor's lackluster selection of leadership for agency heads and misguided priorities. The last DDOT director reportedly left after being forced out because of a dispute about making a major street safer. The agency heads keep revolving around, with none of them, for example, the current leadership of DPW, DGS, or DPR, have substantial expertise in the work that they're supposed to drive. The lack of innovation and imagination and the performance of these agencies is a direct result of the Executive Office of the Mayor's inability to hire experienced leadership for these key roles. We also saw what happened at Office of Unified Communications, where the leadership refused to even acknowledge that they had made a mistake in their handling of the incident at District Dogs and has continued to stymie transparency efforts. Instead, what we have seen from this mayor's office is a misguided push to bring people back downtown and to prioritize parking over people's lives. In the year since the COVID-19 pandemic first broke out, our neighborhoods have changed. So have our commutes to workplaces, schools, and places of entertainment and recreation, to name a few. Instead of focusing on making our residential streets safer, the Office of the Mayor is content to let them remain as urban highways, catering only to the commuters who drive in and out of our city like they're in a Fast and the Furious movie. The needs of people in my single-member district are simple: safer streets where they can travel to work, buy groceries, take their children to school, to playgrounds. We are instead fenced in by multiple major avenues where any safety improvements take years to be enacted, if ever. The District of Columbia is an outlier in major cities where the death toll has gotten higher from people being killed in crashes. 9 people have been killed in the past 2 months alone. I give you the example of Connecticut Avenue Northwest, a stretch that has seen multiple accidents and fatalities, and yet the mayor refuses to greenlight a project that would save lives. I urge this committee to ask the EOM how they plan to prioritize the people of this district. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Zachary Israel, you're next. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to see you, Councilmember Bonds. Thank you for allowing me to speak today on the performance oversight of the Executive Office of the Mayor, or EOM. So my remarks will be sort of narrowly tailored regarding how the EOM approaches its intergovernmental affair functions as a district government. And I know there was a reorganization, I believe, in October 2023. So now the Office of Federal and Regional Affairs, or OFRA, is underneath the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, which is good to see. But I want to talk about the really utter catastrophe that happened over the course of 2023 regarding the nullification of the revised Criminal Code Act that the DC Council passed, and that the Congress of the United States voted to disapprove of, and the president signed into law, something that hasn't happened in several decades. And regardless of how one feels about the public policies contained in that extensive piece of legislation, which was literally, 15 plus years in the making, which is kind of tragic that this legislation died in such a fashion. But really, I feel like the EOM dropped the ball in terms of investing in outreach on Capitol Hill with the Biden administration to have helped avoid what ultimately occurred. And so that's ultimately on the mayor herself And I know that the chief of staff to the mayor will be here. I wish the mayor was here too, because it starts from the top down. And if she had prioritized consistent outreach to our friends and foes on Capitol Hill, I think we could have had a different outcome, and that the RCCA would still be alive today and actually be on the books. And so I would like, this committee and yourself, Chair Bonds, to ask the chief of staff, like, what happened last year and in the months and years leading up to 2023 to have allowed this to have occurred. What lessons have they learned, and how will the newly configured Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, or IGA, approach this differently moving forward? We had the success just the other day in the House of Representatives on the RFK Stadium bill. That's fantastic. I'm supportive of that. But, on things where the mayor may not be fully gung-ho about, but on the principle of autonomy and home rule, she should be fervently arguing on the Hill, what strategy is EOM going to take on those types of things moving forward? That's what I would like to hear. And so there's a lot of room for improvement. And I really hope that EOM is thinking about what lessons were learned after what happened last year. Thank you very much, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And I'll turn now to Barry Hawkins, public witness. And I'll come back to Mr. Jacobson. I see that he did make it here. He said at 2:20, and so he is here. So we'll come right back to you. Mr. Hawkins, are you in the room? No. Mr. Jacobson, we'll hear from you. Mr. Hawkins has not gotten here yet. Thank you.
All right, well, appreciate the flexibility. Chair Bonds and staff members, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Josh Jacobson, and I am the ANC representing 1E06 located in Pleasant Plains. I'm here to testify on the mayor's plans for housing and her policies around that. On Monday, February 26th, Mayor Bowser released her downtown action plan. I appreciate that she understands the need to grow the residential base in our downtown corridors. The plan states the following: begin effort to amend the Height Act by studying areas where modest increases in height caps could maximize affordable housing opportunities, and evaluate modifications to the Historic Preservation Review Board process to ensure a productive balance between housing supply and historic preservation goals. I want to commend the mayor and her team for understanding that historic preservation sometimes runs counter to our housing production goals. I agree with our mayor, and I'm thankful that in 2019, she set a goal of 36,000 new homes by 2025, a goal that we are well on our way to achieving. The Office of Planning predicts that our population will be 845,000 by 2050. That is an additional 165,000 residents. If we want to reduce displacement of existing residents, we will need to be much more bold in allowing much more housing by right across the city than we currently allow. I urge Mayor Bowser to continue her leadership in this regard and set an ambitious goal of 250,000 new housing units by 2050. I recommend a few approaches to accomplish this goal. One, review criteria for designation in the DC inventory. This is in 10 DCMR section 201.1, and research potential adjustments. The current language for what qualifies as historic is relatively broad and leads to abuse. A recent example is the inclusion of a parking lot for Chevy Chase Savings Bank as a historic landmark. I wish I was joking that we historically preserved a parking lot. It is incredibly troubling that a parking lot was included for historic preservation when even the applicants did not discuss the merits of said parking lot being marked for preservation. This should go without saying, but in the abstract, our preservation laws should not allow for something like a parking lot to be landmarked and historically preserved. I urge the mayor and her team to start a review process of the current criteria and consider adjustments. One potential avenue is to increase the number of criteria that a proposed historic landmark or district must meet before being considered. Because currently you only need to meet one of the proposed or one of the criteria in that section. Two, work with council to clarify that height and mass are exclusively under the purview of the Office of Zoning. I understand why some people want to preserve the look and feel of a neighborhood. There is a way to do that while still allowing for more housing to be constructed. Regulations should be clarified that the Office of Zoning has full jurisdiction over these matters. It is duplicative to have two different agencies controlling the height and mass of buildings within a given area. Third, allow by right construction of fourplexes throughout the district in upflum arterials, especially those areas close to a major metro line, to be at least residential medium density. I agree with the mayor's plan to pursue modifications to the Height Act. However, there are plenty of other opportunities that do not require congressional action that we should be pursuing. We do not need to just focus on one when we can do both. Neighboring jurisdictions are taking bold action in increasing their housing supply. Our region will continue to grow, and we will increase our tax base by building more housing. Legalizing fourplexes throughout the district is a modest solution to help us compete with Montgomery County and Northern Virginia for residents. And upflumming our transit corridors will help us increase density while also creating more customers for Armada and helping deal with the budget woes. Thank you for your time, and I will stick around in case there are any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Okay, I think this might conclude our public witnesses. I do want to ask you, Mr. Jacobson, if we could start for just 1 minute. I believe you said that you are estimating that we're going to increase our population to 850?
That is a number that I cited from the Office of Planning, and it's 845,000 by 2050.
Okay, all right. All right, so, and that does speak to where will people live? And that's your concern. So you want to make sure that these goals that you will submit to us in writing in your testimony are goals that the mayor at least considers as we move forward to, I guess I'll say, reimagine and restore our community. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
The city's going to continue to grow, whether we like it or not. Those residents will end up somewhere. It's just a matter of, will those residents displace existing residents? And if we don't grow our housing stock, they will displace existing residents because housing prices will drive up too high.
Have you thought about goals that we can subscribe to that would sort of put the brakes on the high cost of housing, particularly rental units, as we note that more and more individuals are deciding that it's better to rent than to own because it gives them flexibility to move around a little faster. Have you given thought to that?
I think, I appreciate the question. I think a lot of that is honestly driven by the current mortgage rates, just because mortgage rates are so high that it ends up being cheaper in some sense to rent, in the hopes that the mortgage rates will go down over the coming years, and that if you buy a house 2 years from now, your mortgage rate might be 3% cheaper, which, you know, if you're getting 4% instead of a 7% mortgage rate, you're going to save tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of your loan.
So your thought is that there is still a strong interest to become a homeowner in the District of Columbia?
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I became homeowners 2 years ago. There are a lot of benefits to doing so. I still think that we need to be thinking about folks that are going to be renting and building more housing, whether or not it's for renters or primarily for owner occupied units, will help drive down housing costs generally. If you just look at the metro areas across the country, the ones that have been the most successful in reducing housing costs are the ones that are producing more housing units. And there's actually an interesting experiment between St. Paul and Minneapolis, where as a result of some policies that were passed, and I believe Minneapolis, there was a significant drop in housing produced in Minneapolis over a period of time. It might actually be St. Paul. I'm mixing the two up, and I shouldn't, because I'm a native Minnesotan. But one area didn't build enough housing. One area built a lot more housing. The area that built a lot more housing saw drops in rents, whereas the area that didn't build as much housing saw rises in rents. And these were cities that are right next to each other.
All right, yes, St. Paul, yes. I thank you very much for your response. Mr. Israel, we will examine your concerns definitely with the chief of staff, and I'm sure that the mayor will be made very, very much aware of your concerns. Your concerns are those that I've heard others express. So I do understand what your concerns may be, but I wanted to ask you, do you have real strong thoughts about what specifically the mayor could have done or should have done, or you would have preferred that she did in order to make the case stronger for the District of Columbia?
Yes, I mean that's a great question. I think there are a couple of tactics that Mayor Bowser could have deployed if she had wanted to and it not wouldn't necessarily have prevented what happened, but I think that it would have helped our cause in terms of home rule and the nullification of the RCCA. So for instance, she could have had rallies with DC residents and our shadow delegation, our 2 shadow senators and shadow representative and other elected members of the council to just to show support for the principle of home rule, right? And I didn't really see any of that. And I also think that, consistently showing up to the Hill and meeting with those in positions of power, both Republicans and Democrats, those who support DC statehood and those who don't, over a very long period of time consistently would have helped mitigate what occurred. And to my knowledge, I don't think those types of meetings happen very often, if at all, with the exception of Chairman Comer on the House Oversight Committee for the RFK stadium bill, right? Like it needs to be more consistently done so that when these serious problems arise, we're not taken off guard and don't stand a chance at winning on our side for home rule. So I think there's room for improvement, and I hope the mayor sort of changes her tactics moving forward on that.
All right, I thank you very much for that response. Mr. Muller, you are very concerned about the Department of Buildings, and in your concern, you have given us a plan of action. Have you had any conversations with the director of the department about this idea?
Absolutely not. Within the last 17 months, I've also asked for a meeting or a telephone call with the deputy mayor for operations and infrastructure, and I've never heard back. I have talked to the mayor's office of legal counsel about my concerns about the conduct of the general counsel's office. And I was advised to send another note out requesting a meeting. But the avoidance is not going to get us to Mr. Jacobson's world. And cranking out permits willy-nilly by the wrong people with the wrong skills, with the wrong review is not going to get us there either.
All right, so you just zeroed in on an area, a specific area, and that is the permitting process.
Yes.
Is that one of the areas that you have found that you're telling us today that the agency is delinquent in?
There needs to be an upgrade. The building department handles refurbishment. Major refurbishment is needed in the Office of Construction and Building Standards, the Construction Codes Coordinating Board, which is a black box group that needs to be opened up for public oversight, and also the General Counsel's office. So that is about 1/3 of the 375 FTEs in that $80 million agency that I have direct exposure to. I can't speak to mold. I can't speak to illegal construction, but those stories are rife within the city as well. I think Mr. Mendelson was very disappointed in the last one, if I could interpret his reactions a week ago.
Yes, I believe you're correct. It is with that particular agency's oversight is within the committee of the whole, and Mr. Mendelson, our
Yes.
chairperson, is chairs that committee.
Yes,
Thank you very much for that additional information.
thank you.
Miss, I hope I don't butcher your name too badly. Miss Intria?
Imtiaz.
Yeah, Indo. Okay, all right. You are, you mentioned something. I live in I guess the southern, so-called Bloomingdale area. I know you. You're one of my ANCs, and I Okay. You mentioned the urban highway, that you feel that the neighborhood, our neighborhood, I have to say, is sort of fenced in by these these roadways. I had not looked at it from that perspective, but I'm certainly cognizant of what you're sharing with us. So what do you feel can be done when a street or roadway like North Capitol, which is a corridor in and out of the city, a main corridor in and out of the city, is utilized on a regular basis? How can the city, which has commerce and people are coming and going all the time, should we put that roadway somewhere else in another neighborhood?
Well, absolutely not. I don't wish, harm from one neighborhood to happen to another. But what I will say is that this administration, led by Mayor Bowser, has many tools at their disposal to make these urban highways safer. One is we need to be investing more heavily in making bus-only routes, for example, which this administration has done to some extent, and we have bus cameras now that will make sure people who are using mass transit, especially our WMATA buses, can be able to get in and off the buses quickly, and that they move efficiently through the city. I know that there is a plan in place for North Capitol Street to become safer, but again, it has been much delayed. And we want this, I think everyone in the community definitely wants action in this faster. And again, just for the benefit of this committee, people live, including yourself, live on these urban highways. Everyone should be able to have the same street safety living on North Capitol Street that they do on a side street that might be one way only. And so, again, Mayor Bowser's leadership and the agency heads that she appoints should be able to force through changes that would make our streets safer. This includes reducing the number of making sure that our streets are designed in a way that are safer, making sure that people are investing in mass transit, making sure that there are safety improvements that residents long ask for are enacted quickly. You might have heard at the DDOT hearing that we have to wait up to 1 to 2 years for a speed hump to be installed. And so while we're not saying that these streets should be removed from one area to another, we do need to make our streets not function like urban highways and function like roads, where people are able to walk safely, cross the street safely, and live on those streets safely. We have hundreds and thousands of people who live on New Jersey Avenue, Rhode Island Avenue, and North Capitol Street, and they should be able to live and breathe the same clean air that everyone else is.
I hear you. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us more information. Mr. Havlin, thank you very much for your remarks, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss it with the Chief of Staff today. Thank you very much. Thank you to our public witnesses today, and we really appreciate hearing from you. It's a variety of things. I'm very sure that the EOM, as we affectionately refer to it as, but that the Executive Office of the Mayor is prepared to respond to all of your questions today. So thank you again. We will now turn to our government witness. And we'll give you a minute to get situated. Yes, please do. Will raise your right hand. We'll swear you in. Do you swear and affirm that your testimony and any statements that you make before us today to be accurate and complete? All right, thank you. And thank you both for being here. All right, and please introduce yourselves when you start.
Hi, good afternoon, Chairman Bonds. Can you hear me?
You're good.
Yeah. Thanks for having us today. I'm joined by the Mayor's Deputy Chief of Staff, Steve Walker, and I'm Lindsay Parker, the Mayor's Chief of Staff. So good afternoon. I'll start my testimony.
Yes, you can.
All right.
Yes, when you're ready. Yours.
I'm here to testify on behalf of the Executive Office of the Mayor in regards to the agency performance in fiscal years 2023 and 2024 to date. The Executive Office of the Mayor plays a critical role in supporting Mayor Bowser's agenda and ensuring that the Bowser administration's policies and initiatives are effectively communicated, implemented, and responsive to community needs, including translating those needs into action across the administration. The Executive Office of the Mayor consists of the immediate staff to the mayor, along with entities such as the Office of the Secretary. EOM has a multifaceted role that includes overseeing communications, outreach, appointments, scheduling, legislative relations at various levels of government, including with the Council of the District of Columbia, the U.S. Congress, the federal government, regional governments, and international stakeholders. You can find out more about our events, mayoral events, and ways to engage with our team at mayor.dc.gov. This past year, the Executive Office of the Mayor continued to focus on communicating about responsive and effective services and programs to the residents and businesses of the District of Columbia. As we pivoted away from pandemic operations, we were able to maintain a high level of service and support for DC residents and businesses. Together, we worked with the community and DC government agencies to jumpstart DC's comeback, launching our comeback plan, breaking ground on office to residential conversions, welcoming new employers and millions of visitors to our downtown, building on our progress at St. Elizabeth's East Campus in Ward 8, and enrolling more students in our public schools, and even more. We combined lessons that we learned during COVID, such as the public's continued desire for always improving our customer experience with evolving tools such as artificial intelligence to enhance the work that the EOM does every day around coordination, collaboration, and communication. We collaborated and coordinated with residents, businesses, community leaders, school leaders, public safety partners, members of the council to put forth legislation like the Mayor's Safer, Stronger bill and the Act Now bill. And we look forward to the council passing the Secure DC Act on Tuesday, which includes important provisions from both of those bills. Internally, we restructured the Executive Office of the Mayor so that we can communicate with and respond more quickly to constituent issues. This reorganization has increased two-way communication with critical partners, from our labor unions to partners in Congress. On October 16th of 2023, Mayor Bowser announced the reorganization and created the following divisions reporting into the Chief of Staff. I'll briefly talk about each of those 5 divisions. So one is the Office of the General Counsel, led by the General Counsel to the Mayor, Betsy Cavendish, and she's served in this role since the beginning of the Mayor's administration. She advises the Mayor and the EOM offices on legal matters. The second pillar in the Executive Office of the Mayor is the Office of the Secretary, led by Secretary Kim Bassett, who manages DC's archives, which I know you've heard all about, commissions all DC notaries. She publishes the District of Columbia Register weekly and the District of Columbia Municipal Regs as well. And also acts as a liaison between the government and the 170 embassies that make up our diplomatic community in Washington, DC. The third pillar is the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, which actually it sounds like some of the witnesses talked a little bit about earlier. That's led by the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, Director Tomas Talamante, who serves to engage our local, our regional, our federal, our international governments and elected officials to address the most pressing issues and advance the mayor's agenda. This new portfolio that was announced in October includes the Office of Policy and Legislative Affairs, who the council knows well, and the Office of Federal and Regional Affairs, an office that the mayor created when she first came into office to be very intentional about our relationship with both federal agencies, including the White House and Congress, both the House and the Senate. We are just thrilled about the recent victory that we worked on yesterday, the House of Representatives, in a massive bipartisan way, passed the RFK campus bill, allowing DC the ability to really activate a massive area of Washington, DC for housing, recreation, and other fun improvements. The next bucket is the Office of Communications, which is led by the Senior Advisor for Strategic Communications, Carrie Cones, and the Mayor's Communications Director, Susana Castillo. They're responsible for creating and coordinating direct dialogue between the mayor and the public by providing strategic communication direction to our agencies, media relations, public information dissemination, agency communications review and coordination, setting government-wide communication standards, and guidance to and training opportunities for Bowser administration public information officers in each agency. And then the last pillar is operations and engagement, led by the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Mayor, Steve Walker. And he is responsible for improving him and a team, which includes folks that members of the community know well, our MOCers, or the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services team, and the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs folks. Their work improves public awareness and involvement in the work of the Bowser administration, including maintaining that strong communication with our residents and businesses via our outreach and engagement offices and by filling mayoral appointments. That includes both cabinet positions, as well as a slew of boards and commission seats. And so on that note, our progress has continued into FY24, seen in projects that reflect our commitment to bringing teams together to streamline service delivery, from our new safe commercial corridor hub in Chinatown to a new mayor's order that outlines actions that the Bowser administration is taking to harness the power of artificial intelligence. You can check out those values at techplan.dc.gov/AI values. So that's techplan.dc.gov/AI values. And this includes the ability, actually the sort of the development of a beta chatbot to help navigate DC government websites. And that's available at dc.gov/AI. So any member of the public can go there and essentially communicate with a chatbot and ask them questions of the DC government, of anything that's on the dc.gov public-facing websites, which is going to help us better respond and understand how online visitors to DC government are interacting with government, and how then we can take that information and better streamline that experience going forward. So we're really excited about that. Do check it out. In conclusion, I am proud, tremendously proud of my colleagues in the Executive Office of the Mayor and all that we've done over the past year, and excited about the opportunities that lie ahead. I'm confident that by continuing to work together, we can continue to provide more targeted and streamlined services and programs to our residents and businesses. And I look forward to returning to testify in the coming weeks in support of Mayor Bowser's budget. And want to remind residents and businesses that we continue to look forward to hearing the public's priorities regarding next year's budget at budget.dc.gov. And we're going to have our last budget engagement forum actually this evening, which is specifically targeting Gen Z. So we're excited for them to come in and join us and share their ideas. So thank you so much for your time today, Councilmember, and I look forward to answering any questions that you have.
Thank you very much for your time and your testimony. And would you give that announcement again about tonight's meeting and where it's located? Because as I told the seniors the other day, I know that the government is listening to their concerns, their comments.
That's absolutely correct. And in fact, we've had just some tremendous budget engagement forum time is my favorite time of year, where we get to really hear some spectacular ideas from residents about how they want to see our city move forward. And so we've actually had two in-person budget engagement forums already, one last Saturday and one last night in Ward 5. Tonight is the last engagement forum. It's going to be online, actually. And so you can watch it at mayor.dc.gov/live. So that's where you can watch all of our live events, mayor.dc.gov/live. You can also, it's going to be at 5:30 tonight. And you can call in if you are a member of our the Gen Z generation. You can call in with your questions, and you can learn about that at budget.dc.gov. Budget.dc.gov.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that information. I am not a Gen Z, but I might want to tune in and see what Gen Z is saying
I mean,
because,
totally.
you know, the old cliche says that's our future, but I think it's also our present. So I'm
much so.
very curious about how they are looking at things, which is so different. I can tell from my grandkids.
No, I agree, but I'm so excited about it because I want to see what they're gonna, if it's
Yes.
gonna differ from any of the conversations that we had.
Yeah.
And I'm being reminded that in fact, people can call in to participate in it as well. Should
Okay.
I also give that
Yes,
information?
please do.
So that is 844-881-1314. Again, that's 844-881-1314. And really, if you interact, as I think most of Gen Z does, with any of our social media accounts online, Mayor Bowser's social media accounts on Twitter or on Instagram, you're also going to find that same information.
All right. Well, that also sends a message to me that you have to be out of here before 5:30 so you
That's true.
can do one of your favorite things.
I appreciate you.
So thank you for that. You answered a number of questions for us. And we have that information and there may be a few that, we might want to highlight. But we also have other questions that we wanted to share. And for the public that's tuned in today, all of the agencies pretty much receive the same bank of questions as it relates to their programming, how they're doing and what have you. And so today is an opportunity for some very specific programs to be put on the record. And so I wanted to start with just a few. And this ties back into the testimony we received from a couple of our public witnesses, thinking about the world of the mayor talking to the federal agencies, talking to the federal government, talking to Congress. And so in question 33 of your pre-hearing responses, you mentioned that the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs was working with the federal government to advocate for priorities and policies important to DC. So in addition to, we know RFK, because we're all celebrating that today, and that's a biggie. Anytime the federal government transfers land to any other part of America. So are there other things that you can talk about, policies and priorities that you have been advocating with the federal partners on?
I think that's a great question. I heard your exchange earlier with one of the witnesses. Interestingly enough, I think half of the battle is making sure that our federal partners and our folks on the folks on the Hill, in the House of Representatives and the Senate actually understand DC. And really understanding sort of this special place that we get to work and live every day is a place that people work and live and raise families and grow old. And we have neighborhoods and we function just like their jurisdictions do outside of Washington, D.C. That's actually half the battle. You would be surprised. So even this morning, I had a conversation with somebody that works in the White House about a situation that was happening near one of the federal government agencies. And so that type of interaction actually allows us to set the stage when we do have tough issues that we then have to raise, whether that's in a federal government agency, the White House, or on the Hill. And those conversations typically, I would argue, they range the gamut, but most of the time we're advocating for our federal payment, making sure that, as you know, we plan and execute on presidential inaugurations. And so making sure that we've got funding that we need in order for DDOT to ensure that our streets are ready, MPD to ensure that our security teams are ready, and the fire and emergency medical services team to ensure that we've got the medical services in place for that type of event. That goes into our federal payment. And so those are the types of issues that we oftentimes ask the federal government to help us out on.
Thank you very much for that. And I think that kind of is what we in the city, in our communities, thought was going on. Are there any other very specific things that we're currently working with the feds on that you would want to share at this time?
Every single, I'm trying to think of a federal government agency that we don't have sort of important conversations with. We talk to the U.S. Department of Transportation about the importance of our roads and bridges and ensuring that we get the grants that we're asking for. We talk to the Department of Environment or the Department of Energy about the same type of requests. We talk to Housing and Urban Development about our affordable housing goals and the things that they could help us do to achieve even more of those towards those goals. So.
All right. And so in talking with these agencies, is it the process where the mayor is actually moving forth to visit with these agencies, or is it more staff to staff work that we are engaged in as a community?
Both is what I would say. The mayor moves around the city and talks to a lot of people. Many members of the Biden administration's cabinet live here and are constituents. Same thing with members of Congress. And so we definitely run into them and definitely always are available when they need to meet. But our staff stay in close contact.
All right. So the real process that you use is, as you just said, being and staying in contact. And it could be the mayor directly with the secretaries. It could also be the staff is reaching out. All right. Well,
That's right.
I want that to
really
go on the
that's
record.
why, the mayor created the Office of Federal and Regional Affairs when she took office. So that's now, 10 years strong.
Yes.
We've established those relationships and protocols.
Yes. And you should know that back in the day, there was also a similar, not an office, but there were individuals who were engaged in that, and rightfully so, because our government is 50 years old since home rule. And I understand back in the day, they everything came via the federal government and through the congressional activity. So that accounts for a lot of what you're speaking to us about today. I think Mr. Israel, our public speaker, said that he was looking for rallies with DC residents and showing up and meeting with members of Congress. How does that fit in the plans for doing this intergovernmental relations?
Sure. Actually, Councilmember, I think you joined us at a few different statehood rallies over time. I think we took a bus once up Pennsylvania Avenue to make sure that people understood that we, again, live and work and thrive in Washington, D.C. So we've done a number of events, including receptions on Capitol Hill to ensure that especially new members, have an introduction to Washington, D.C. and know the importance of the fact that we don't have an elected official with voting privileges in our Congress. And that is important. We need people to understand that. And we want to make sure that we're moving the needle to advance statehood basically every single time we talk to anybody that's in the federal government.
Well, let me ask you, you pointed out a very important situation that we find ourselves in, and that is that we do not have a member in Congress. We have a representative, but not a voting member on the floor of Congress. So then how would you rate our work on the Hill, as an example, as in comparison to where we want it to be? I'm assuming we want it to be a 10 or a 5, depending on which scale you're looking at. If it's a 10, then are we maybe at an 8 or 7, or are we at a 9? We certainly are not at a 3 or a 5. So this is my opinion. So I'm just checking it out with you. So how do you feel we're doing? And is there more that we can do that you think would make a difference? That's what is important.
You know, that's a good question. I think the way that I would answer that, if you think about it, every single member of Congress comes in with their focus on their home jurisdictions. And so, and we're not their home jurisdiction. And so there's always going to be space to educate and make people aware and hopefully advocate for that member, that either it's a new member or it's somebody that's been there for a really long time, to make sure that they understand that there's a pocket of the United States of America that does not have the ability to vote for a voting member of Congress. And so I don't think I don't think I would ever say that we were at a 10, because then we would have full statehood. But we, you know, our push is to make sure that, you know, the mayor says this to anybody that she meets that comes to work in Washington, that while they're here, she is their mayor, and we work to make sure that they feel at home and that they get the services that they need as they move about our city. And I think that goes a long way in making sure that that individual knows that we are a functioning, highly functioning city with a robust population of interesting and smart and talented individuals. And, you know, they ought to be pushing for us to have the ability to elect members of Congress that can vote on issues that we all believe in. So we'll continue to do that.
All right, so we're 8.5 or 8.75.
I love it. We heard it here. We heard it here.
Thank you so much for entertaining that. Also, in your pre-hearing questions, you discussed the organization of the EOM, and you referenced the reorganization. And you went through the different changes that have been made. Could you inform the public as to when you talk about 149 FTEs, are they, what are some of the jobs, the tasks, the positions that are in the EOM? Because I'm trying to distinguish, or have you to distinguish, whether or not the EOM is like an operating agency. Is it a coordinating function? Is it a leadership, all dealing with policy every waking hour?
Great question. The whole purpose of the executive office of the mayor, much like an executive office of a governor or an executive office of the president, we are, our form and function is to support that principle, and that is the mayor. And that makes us, I don't know if I could pick between the array that you just pointed out, but our entire purpose is to make sure that we are pushing the mayor's agenda forward and working with the Bowser administration agencies to achieve just that. And so that happens through a number of different avenues, whether that is through mayor's orders, executive orders that the mayor executes to instruct our administration on what priorities they should be focused on, whether that is naming new appointees. So we also do that via executive mayor's order and or appointments that come down through the council. So making sure that we're facilitating that process. We also make sure that we're scheduling the mayor and all the different requests that come in for her time and attention, and doing so in a way that's moving the ball forward for Washington, D.C. and our residents. And we have a whole team of just spectacular communications experts that includes a digital team, it includes a team that's helping the more than 90 agencies across DC government coordinate and make sure that we're answering the tough questions and informing the press, keeping the press informed about what's going on throughout the city, and not doing it in such a siloed way that we don't, we recognize that residents don't see the world according to agencies. They see the world according to what's an issue that's top of mind at the time. And we work really hard to make sure that we're coordinating so that we're answering the questions that they need when they need them. Making sure that we're also doing that same thing with residents. So in community, ensuring that we've got representation at ANC meetings, at Citizens Association meetings, at Civic Association meetings, at CAC meetings, and then also just a whole host of other kind of events and associations across town. I was just reminded that, we host receptions, for instance, for the Congressional Black Caucus, and we host receptions for the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and we host receptions when all the mayors fly in for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And so all of those events allow us to sort of move the needle a little bit forward, make sure that we're representing the residents of Washington, D.C. to regional, national, international players, but then also learn from some of those colleagues and do better and more impactful things for our city.
Thank you very much for that. You mentioned 3 areas, I have to follow up on. All right. You were mentioning an abundance of engagement types of activities that the EOM is involved in. And I was just curious, is there an opportunity for individuals in community to also be a part of the engagement? I can recall, again, back in the day, there was a process where all invitations came into, in this instance, it would be to Mr. Walker. And therefore, you'd have a pecking order. In other words, a lineup of individuals who would make themselves available to also be at events, to be at meetings, so that you would get feedback from them, which is outside of, having to move the mayor around day in and day evening. I mean, so I just wondered if that is something that you're considering. I can say it worked pretty magically back in the day. So
I love it.
I think the day is the same from what I heard from our few public witnesses today. They want involvement. They want in.
Yeah. I think the way that I would answer that question is we have, and I've worked for 2 different administrations, 2 different mayoral administrations over the past 15 years. What I would say is that there's even more channels for engagement today than there ever have been before. And really COVID just sort of further increased the availability of all of those channels. So to give you an example, you can go to mayor.dc.gov and invite the mayor to an event. You can also ask for a meeting with the mayor. Both of those, sometimes the mayor will come, more often than not, she will. But sometimes she'll ask because she's got competing priorities. She'll ask a deputy mayor to attend. She'll ask the city administrator to attend, or one of many different cabinet members to go on her behalf. Also, people mail in invitations, and that comes into the mayor's correspondence unit, led by Jim Slattery. He also makes sure that we have all of that documented, and we prioritize where, what events the mayor can attend. But again, if 5 requests come in for the same amount of time, we'll make sure that a member of the team attends those. We also get emails. We have emails that go to those 149 members of the team. And really every single one of our email accounts is a way that somebody can request a meeting, and those come into the scheduling in advance office as well. We make sure that we prioritize who goes to those events too. And then of course, we've got our front desk phone. We've also got a number of other phones throughout the executive office of the mayor. So if requests come in those ways as well, that also gets prioritized.
All right, and thank you for that. And I do understand that there are many avenues for the public to become engaged. I was just really curious if you had a system where individuals would be invited to join the mayor at this or that event.
Yeah,
I think that's magic,
I love it.
but just,
We do it all the time, and you just joined us this
Okay,
week, actually,
okay.
at the Senior and Budget
Yeah,
Engagement Forum. We
yeah,
were in
yeah.
Congress Heights,
Mhm.
and I don't know if you recognized, but we had watch parties going on across the district. So
Yes.
I think the number kept changing as more and more
Mhm.
seniors signed up. But not only could seniors join us on the phone from home, they could also join us at I think at least 8 other locations across the city. And we had a full house in Congress Heights, which was exciting, and an overflow room. So every single time, actually, the mayor is out in public, we think about who we should be talking to. So we do
Okay.
it every single day, in fact.
Yeah, I think that's a very good approach. And I know that there are people in community who would be ecstatic to join the mayor at an event that relates to what their interest is, of course. I also have to ask about these 90 agencies across the government. Does that include the independent agencies?
It just kind of depends on how you slice it.
Okay.
Right? So every single, one could argue and count every single office within the mayor's office of community affairs. So that could, it's a number of offices that could be included as as individual agencies. So it's just sort of, there's different ways to count. Yeah.
Okay, so 90 represents the operating agencies.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Okay,
And I actually think about them as directors that we have to appoint. So.
Okay, directors you have to
Mhm.
appoint.
Yep.
Okay, so, but some you do not appoint, others appoint them. When I say others,
An example of that might be the DC Housing Authority. That executive director is appointed by the board.
right,
So that's an
and
example.
the same with the Board of Elections, so yes.
That's right.
As I learned,
Mhm.
okay, all right, okay, just want to make sure. But the Department of Water, DC Water, is that?
So David Gaddis is the CEO of DC
Mhm.
Water, and he is appointed by the board.
By the
Hired by the
board,
board. Mhm.
okay. So, all right, so those that are truly independent are appointed by the board,
Yep. But of course, the mayor appoints a number of the board members.
correct?
Mhm.
And so of those that I'm trying to understand, then when we speak of the agencies of the district government, we kind of like lump everyone together. And I'm trying to understand when you count or you say that independent agencies are not included, I was trying to understand what that meant.
It depends. Some independent agencies, there is a direct appointee, right? So a good example of that is the People's Council, actually, which is in front of you. The Office of People's Council nominee is in front of you
Yes.
at Tuesday's legislative session. And so that
Right.
is a appointment of the mayors. Another
see.
example of that is the CFO and a few others. So there's just every agency is a little different. It's based on laws passed by the DC Council.
All right. Okay, thank you. Can you describe the existing MOUs that the EOM has and how these help the district? I'm thinking of a MOU with the Office of Chief Technology as one example. Can you tell us more about the technology services and how Octo is all over the government? It's octopus all over.
I appreciate that question. As you know, I most recently was able to serve as the Chief Technology Officer for the DC government. And actually, every agency within DC government has an MOU with Octo. It is for basic telecom services, as well as the internet that we utilize throughout the I used to know this number off the top of my head, but 650 buildings that DC government employees are housed in. And so the same thing here.
And so does that mean that those independent agencies that we were talking about, that they also are part of Octo's network?
Yeah, they are, in fact. It's sort of up to the agencies, to tell you the truth. And it's actually why Mayor Bowser attempted in last year's Budget Support Act to ensure that we were consistent with our cybersecurity protocols for all independent agencies as well, because many of them are actually on our network. Now, some of them are not on our network. We've seen some troubling cybersecurity incidents, in fact, with agencies that are not connected into some of our network operations. And as a result, potentially not sort of adhering to some of the National Institute of Security of Standards and Science and Technology standards that we set and expect those that are utilizing our network to comply with. And so that's why that provision was in the Budget Support Act.
All right. Do you know whether or not the Board of Elections is following up on becoming a part of that network?
Yeah.
I think their recent concerns that they had.
Yeah. So
The breach was not them, but their contractor.
Mhm.
And certainly my advice was to get with Octo immediately.
I was the Chief Technology Officer, but I haven't been since March 17th of last year. And I wouldn't want to get into any conversation that I'm not as caught up with at the moment. But what I will say is when I was there, we found that independent agencies sort of more and more frequently are coming to the Office of the Chief Technology Officer to ask for help. And that's a good thing.
All right. Well, thank you very much. In FY 23, you had in the EOM, you showed 126 FTEs. And now for the 24 budget, you're showing 149. It seems they are added from MOCA, M-O-C-A. Am I saying it right, MOCA?
MOCA stands for the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs.
Yes, yes.
And sort of the new FTEs. I think that's right. I think there's additional Mayor's Office of Community Affairs FTEs in there.
Mhm. Yes, I think that's what it's attributed to. Just wanted to confirm that. If you would like to talk a little more about the AI task force that was announced on February 8th of this year. When do you expect deliverables and what kind of deliverables are you looking for?
Well, interestingly, you can still sign up if you would like to be a part of the Artificial Intelligence Task Force. I'm so excited and proud of Mayor Bowser and the administration for making sure that we are participating, right, in some game-changing technology advances, but doing so carefully and thoughtfully, as we have to be more secure, reliable than sort of anyone else when it comes to sort of the technology that we utilize to deliver services in DC government. And so at MOTA, MOTA.dc.gov, so that's the Mayor's Office of Talent and Appointments, MOTA.dc.gov, you can actually see all of the different boards and commission spots that we have vacancies for, and we're asking for people to apply. And one of those is the Artificial Intelligence Task Force. The neatest thing there is the day that the mayor announced the task force, by the end of the day, I think we already had 5 applications. So that news made its way around the net quite quickly, and also a lot of DC residents were very interested in being part of that. And what they'll do is they'll help us sort of carry out the values that were established by the mayor's order, sort of setting some guardrails around artificial intelligence, and then help us think through, where we're going and how to make sure that we're adhering to those values, but also potentially adding to those values as we learn new things about the technology going forward.
All right. And when you say values, you're speaking, what does values mean?
That's a good question. So one of the things that scares people about the sort of the unknown of artificial intelligence is based on sort of a data source. And so one of the things that we're very careful with in Washington, D.C. government is making sure that anything that touches an artificial intelligence tool is only going to be public-facing information. It's not going to be our personally identifiable information. It's not going to be any sensitive information. And we want to make sure that that stays that way going forward. And we'll have a strict adherence to that, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. That's very important. I'm glad you put that on the record. Okay. In December 2020, when you were not in that seat that you're in today, but nevertheless, the Office of Policy and Innovation, I guess is MOPI, I believe it's okay, executed a grant between Howard University and the Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD. And Howard was granted an extension to complete 2 papers by the spring of 23. One was focused on inclusionary zoning, IZ program, and another was focused on the HPAP, Housing Purchase Assistance Program, and the Employer Assisted Housing Program. And so these papers, have these papers been published at all? We're trying to, in my previous life on the council, I was all the way up to my almost elbows in housing. And so I'm very, very interested in knowing where we are on any of the housing programs, even today. So.
Of course. Thank you so much for your question. And I must admit that prior to my starting in this role, the Mayor's Office of Policy and Innovation was moved to the City Administrator's Office. And so I can't wait to follow up.
All right. And the City Administrator is also in this committee, so thank you. I will deal with that there. Thank you very much. And by the way, you have been as Chief of Staff for a few months. You're not yet, you're still in infancy, so to speak, until that 1 year and two months pass, and then we move you to, you're an old hack at it, okay? So how's it going?
Oh, I appreciate it. The question, it's going really well. I've just got a tremendous team of people, and obviously we serve somebody that we all outworks all of us. So in our mayor, and we're having fun. We're having fun, and we're moving things forward and trying to get things done for residents and businesses, and really trying to bring about our comeback.
Well, I'll tell you, as a resident of this community, forever, it is very important that we have loyalty and competency and understanding. And so thank you very much for that. That's what we want
Thank you so much.
in this city. Let's see, we're moving fast now. You probably, I don't know if this is still, well, this is another MOPI, so I'll have to go. It's really about the Bloomberg Philanthropies Grant. So you want to talk about that, or you rather go to, okay, we'll bump it on. Okay. All right. Are there any lawsuits pending or have lawsuits been resolved against the mayor in FY 23 or 24 to date?
You know, that's a challenging question because technically anytime that you sue Washington DC government, Mayor Bowser is named sort of at the front of it. I don't know if, you know, if you think about some of the longstanding lawsuits that actually a lot of them have been closed at this point. They first had Tony Williams, and then they had Adrian Fenty, and then they had Vince Gray, and then Muriel Bowser named in them. And so that's a sort of anything that comes in, any lawsuit that comes into the District of Columbia, that goes through the Office of the Attorney General these days. So lawsuits come in there. And so they are the ones that have much more visibility in terms of all the lawsuits that we are currently facing.
All right. Well, you mentioned the Office of Attorney General. And I've noted from time to time, the office decides that it's not going to engage on behalf of the district government. How does that feel? And I'm asking, how does our government, which is one government, handle that kind of situation? And what kind of, I want to say precariousness, but that's not a word, it puts us in?
Well, thank you for that question. I think the best way to answer that is hearkening back to the compliment that you just gave me that says I still have a few more months before I'm an old hat. So I think I'm 11 months on the job. You gave me until 1 year and 2 months to really kind of say that I've been here for a minute. And I think that's kind of the same way that I would view the structure of the Office of the Attorney General. It's a new structure. So when I worked for a previous administration, the Office of the Attorney General was agency that served the executive, was part of the executive. It is still part of the executive, mind you, but is independently elected now. And so that is the change that happened and was first instituted, I guess, 10 years ago, at the time when Mayor Bowser took office as mayor. And so I would argue that in a bureaucracy such as ours, 10 years is also an infancy, one would argue. I know that some people would be surprised by that, but when you change reporting lines and you change protocols and processes and procedures, it takes a minute to get things off the ground. One of the things that I would argue that it might be time to look at it, how it's going, and think about the best way to protect the interests of our residents and our businesses and the interests of our government. And I think that would be something that would be wonderful for everyone to partner on.
Thank you very much. And we will follow up on that. I'm sure the OIG is very curious about your response. EOM began working with, I believe it's called Indigov, okay, in the spring of 2023 to enhance communications and feedback. And this was a computer program. Am I correct? Okay. Tell us about that and whether or not it's something that the EOM will recommend be utilized in other parts of the government.
It's a good question. I think the best way to answer this question is, and you're asking me about something that I thoroughly enjoy, is thinking about sort of how to bring on a system that will help simplify the work that has to happen so that we're able to free up more time to sort of deliver those services and programs that people expect, that the public expects. One of the things I would say about, and we say this all the time, and I think people think we sound like a broken record, but Washington, D.C. is unique. And so in the past, we've used, in order to keep track of all of those incoming communiques that we talked about earlier in our conversation, we've used different systems. Sometimes we've used systems that you see on the Hill, that members of Congress use to keep track of constituent services and constituent concerns. Well, in some respects, we're akin to that. We've got constituent services and constituent concerns, but we also have a bunch of different agencies that can help us answer those issues. And so that octopus that you mentioned earlier, and how do you make sure that you're keeping track of all of those different channels? So we're not quite like a member of a congressional office. And we're also not quite like a governor's office because we do more things than just what a governor does. And so when a big technology company is thinking about creating a system, they look at things that are that they can duplicate, right? So the multiple members of Congress, they know that they can sell a product to each of those, and it's going to look and feel very similar because they have sort of similar challenges. Same thing with the governor's office, same thing with mayor's offices. But again, most other cities are not like ours. They don't, the police department, the school system, the fire department, the Department of Energy and Environment, the Department of Motor Vehicles doesn't rest within the same jurisdiction. And so what I would say is it's hard for us sometimes to buy a system that's pre-made that fits all of our hopes and dreams. And so we've tried a lot out over the years, and we continue to look for one that is going to work best for us, and that's okay. I think that's sort of a sign of good government that we continue to sort of press to find a great solution.
All right. And this is one, it has rapid email response
I
to
would
mass
say
email.
we continue to look to find the
Yeah.
best solution.
Tag constituents with a system to keep data clean, manages cases on mobile app. And for the public's sake, I'm reading this because this is in the official responses that we received to the pre-questions. So I just wanted to put it on the record that you're working on that. Does the EOM communications work primarily to broadcast the mayor's communication, or does it involve broadcasting everything that happens in government?
It's a great question. And one of the things that I think what I would say is this is one of those learning moments that we had during COVID. So we all remember that nearly every day during a global pandemic, Mayor Bowser was in front of the camera talking about our COVID response. And as a result, it wasn't just what the mayor thought of the moment that you were interested in. You were interested in making sure that you had an understanding of all of the different parts of government and what we were doing in order to address the pandemic at the time. And that is an expectation that people got pretty used to. And so I would say maybe prior to the pandemic, when we would think of the Executive Office of the Mayor communications team, you would think about them sort of solely pushing out communication that is, just from the mayor's office. Post-pandemic, you expect that the mayor knows every single thing that's going on throughout the city at all times. And so we work really hard to make sure that that's coordinated and consolidated in a way that residents expect. I would argue, do it faster than ever before as the pace of sort of the news cycle continues to get faster and faster.
So when you think about the 149 positions that you have during this fiscal year, would you say that you have the right number of communication workers? Because I'm hearing that, and I'm also hearing the outreach or engagement piece being both sort of equally important.
That's right. What I would say is, and this kind of goes to what I was talking about in my testimony about sort of coordinating, collaborating, communicating in better ways. What we learned during COVID is to work across government in a much more streamlined way with all communications teams, with all outreach teams. So we are, scaling the ability to communicate and collaborate across government. And so we're all one big team, essentially.
All right, but your emphasis is also on communications and the engagement piece. When I think of communications, legal, outreach, engagement, and policy, really the communications and the engagement pieces are heavy from what you're sharing with us today.
They are, but for instance, every agency has a communications arm as well. And so what we've been able to do is, that just sort of extends the team and makes sure that we've got the right number of people for the moment.
All right. You know how to say the magic words, and you knew where I was headed. I tried to get there, but now I know why you're chief of staff. Okie dokie. I got it. Thank you very much. I hope my colleagues got it too, so that when we're talking in a few weeks about dollars and cents, they will not start and think that they can grab, okay? That was the point of my questions to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Has the Mayor's Office of Talent and Appointment identified boards where you have chronic vacancies? Those areas where you just can't seem, folk aren't coming forward. We almost have to go to their homes and say, come out and help us.
Another great question, council member. I think that the best way to answer that question is we are always looking for ways to streamline and consolidate, make things easier for everyone. And as we look for ways to do more with less going forward, maybe those are some places that we could take a look at. I don't think that I would point to one board as a place where I see chronic vacancies. But what I would say is that I appreciate our partnership with the council in making sure that we're working together to encourage civic participation. I think, there was a little bit of a lull during COVID, right? Where people were worried about their families and their neighbors and their income, and rightly so. And now we need to make sure that we're continuing to work together to encourage people to apply for roles. And we actually have seen an increase. Actually, I think people took the time during COVID to recognize that they wanted to do a little bit more for their community when we got out of it. And what we want to do is encourage that behavior and make sure that anybody that does that, right, signs up to volunteer, to be a part of a board or commission voluntarily, right, with their time, is encouraged to do so, is celebrated, and that we easily approve them and make sure that not to embarrass them, because we want to make sure that that pipeline continues to blossom.
Of course, and I agree with you on that. I'm just thinking when we talk about how do we really look at this situation, I look at the situation with the courts, where there is at least a transportation and food stipend. And that's what I attribute that day, and I'm just wondering if we might want to look at this service. Yes, it's volunteerism, but people should not have to come out of their pocket to volunteer their time. And so it may be worthwhile to look at, even with a tiered approach based on, whether or not you have to, they vote to for licenses or something to that effect, so that maybe we want to upgrade the boards and commissions process. When I began in government, it was, oh my goodness, we did the same thing. Open all the floodgates, come, and the process itself was very, very tedious. I won't tell you this, Mr. Walker, but it was about 5 people that had to do that work day and night, sifting through the information we received. But one of the things that we're faced with today is the high cost of living and transportation costs, and food costs to some degree. So that might be something we want to sweeten the pie with.
So we have several boards and commissions that do have paid spots.
Yes.
I would argue that the Mayor's Office of Talent and Appointments does the same work with 7 people. So it's not like that has increased a
Okay.
lot either. 7 people to, more than 1,000 different appointees
yeah.
is,
Oh, yeah.
they're always working. They're always working.
Oh, I know. Yes, indeed. Thank you for that. So how many of the boards have paid positions, or I'll say stipends, because that's what it amounts to, I guess.
I don't know if I can count off the top of my head, but I will get back to you with that information.
All right.
An example of one would be APCA, the Alcohol Board and Cannabis Administration, I think is what it is now. Beverage and Cannabis Administration. They have a stipend because
Mhm.
they'll have like 8 hours worth of hearings in a day. So
Yes.
they crank out.
And I think zoning, perhaps.
I really am not.
Yeah,
gonna give it a
I don't
count,
know. But if I
will get
could
back
get
to
a
you.
list of those
Yeah.
that are paid, and then those that by law are so critical
Mhm.
to the work that the government must do, a separate list of those, that would help me understand and try to recruit. Of course, I'm going to talk to the communities, and in doing that, ask them to please send forth their information, that your government needs you.
I love it.
Yeah, so we'll try that.
Thank you.
Of course.
And just a reminder that all of our boards and vacancies are posted on, sort of
Yes.
opportunities are posted on moda.dc.gov,
Yes.
Mayor's Office of Talent and Appointments. So
Yes.
mota.dc.gov.
I know, and it's hard to get people to go to the boring government information. If you had little animals jumping around or something, I'm just sharing what they say. In other words, looking at government services not as fanciful as actually other things that they can find on the internet, and trying to get them in is we want to get them in. We want more people to have input in the government. Are there any new boards that you're considering creating?
Oh, that we're considering creating. I think we're at the right number, to tell you the truth, but we have recently, when we've talked about a few of them, the artificial intelligence task force, and the Gallery Place Chinatown task force is another group that was established. So I think the great thing about working with the Bowser administration is the mayor doesn't just create a board to create a board. She creates a board because there's a purpose and a specific mission. And once that mission is achieved, typically those get to sunset.
All right, so as you're thinking about the mission, your first point to us today was the transmission of the RFK Stadium property. What is it, about 500 acres or something huge, 40 some acres? I think it's more like 40 some acres. So it might be savvy to have some sort of advisory group, start with the advisory, and from that, launch pad to some other kind of stronger, input. But, before it gets away, before our community begins to set up their things without having the input from the government, it might be wise.
Great recommendation. And, the mayor has already been out talking to communities about the vision for RFK and that campus. And it's exciting to see the different ideas that have come in from sort of skating, a sort of skateboarding area to a soccer complex and recreational complex. It's exciting to think about all that can be done there. And it's a lot of acres.
Yes, yes, it is. The Clemency Board is in your Office of General Counsel. Can you speak a little bit about how the application process works for this board and how they are received? And is the board working to ensure that the process aligns with the processes in other states, given the limitations on our ability to make our own decisions?
It's a great question. Betsy Cavendish and her team are excited. We're excited to get that challenge. The board meets quarterly, and we have an application process that we continue to look around the country to make sure that we're thinking about the best ways to move forward there. One of the things that I would welcome a partnership on, council member, is we've not seen the uptick that we would hope for, and so making sure that folks are applying and coming in to meet with us. We do some regular outreach in regards to that. And so we'll look for ways to partner with you on getting the word out.
Yes, I think it could be a very important opportunity because I believe it should have a role in the expungement of records. And if we could do that, that would be tremendous. And it's sorely needed. And I tell people all the time, those who are sentenced, they return to the district because they have to come back to the district, even if resources and family are no longer here. And they must get a job, and they must get ID before they get a job. It's a very challenging situation. And as we scream as people that we want more humanity for everyone, we sometimes forget that this is a resource in the district. We get, I think it's a little less than 500 returnees every month to the District of Columbia. 7 years ago, it was almost 1,500 every month. And our population was, okay. So, and then I think sometimes we forget that these are family members that are returning, family, friends. They're here and they must be here. It's not like we can say, oh, you should have gone to Oklahoma, California. You have to be here in the District of Columbia. And I just think that if we can help them get employment, which they must have, it would be tremendous.
Yep. Some of the hardest working members of our team in the executive office of the mayor are returning citizens. I would
Yes.
say they
Yes.
work harder than anyone else. And I
Yep.
would encourage, everybody to think about pathway through public service, to tell you the truth.
Yes.
So You can actually at together.dc.gov/jobs, you can see all the different jobs across DC government. So that's at DC Public Schools and MPD and Fire and EMS, but also the multitude of other agencies with openings. And one of the things that this administration has done is really take a hard look at the qualifications for jobs and making sure that we're opening them up to as large of a population as possible. And so kind of getting rid of antiquated barriers that have anything to do with being a returning citizen. So we'll continue to lean into that rigorously.
Yeah, we appreciate that because it's so important. And, it's important to have the opportunity and the option to apply. It's more significant if we can help them be assured they'll have a job. And that's one of the biggest hurdles we're facing now. We have not learned how to assure them that they will have a job. And I think it can help with many of the goals and objectives that we've set for our community. I think that has to be a must. We have a veterans preference, as we know, across the nation, but we do not have a preference if we say we're giving you a second chance, or you should have a second chance. And I think if we were able to do something in that regard, it would make a big difference in our community and with the conditions of our streets today.
Yeah, I think my only push there is the Bowser administration has been focused on giving every resident of Washington, D.C. a fair shot to a great paying job and a good opportunity. And that to me is really the focus, is making sure that everybody's got a fair shot. So we, and I think, you and I have talked about this too, making sure that we're putting in place the educational opportunities and the housing opportunities to ensure that somebody's ready to grab the opportunity when it comes to them. That is what we all are focused on in the Bowser administration.
I certainly know that. I also know that the administration has been focused on making sure that those who are a little more downtrodden than the rest have an opportunity to rise up. And that is so critical. And that takes us to the whole issue of equity. And I mean, the mayor put forth, the task force for Black home ownership. And so without even thinking, I'm very sure that she wants to make sure that those who are, I'll say near the bottom of the income scale, have an opportunity to move up as fast as possible. And that doesn't take anything away from those who are at the top, in the middle, who are doing well and kicking it, as the term is in the community. It doesn't take from them, because if we all don't get there, it doesn't matter if some of us get there, and we all know that. Well, thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the results of the Immigrant Justice Legal Services Grants Program? In 23, your predecessor talked a little bit about the program and pointed out that it was a $500,000 program, and that I believe this year is 3.5 million program, and I think 25 grants, and it's 22 returning grantees that were a part of it. And do you have information about that? I'm trying to determine whether or not there's still services available through this program?
I'll get back to you on the exact amount of money, but yeah, no, it's tremendously important program that is doing a number of different things. Chief among them is allowing for access to legal services. And so happy to kind of get you a full briefing on all the different programs that have been just kind of generated and the help that it's afforded are a really important community.
All right, thank you very much. And I asked because I know we still have the migrant program here, and that we've received a couple of concerns about the conditions and the situations in New York City. Want to make sure that we are aware that we do not want those outbreaks of violence to happen in the streets of the district. Has your office heard from the public about that as it relates to Mayor Adams in New York and his government?
I think immigration is sort of top of mind. It's one of those kind of issues that is going to garner a lot of attention in the coming months as we head into the presidential election. And so obviously we all continue to follow the changes in the world that impact immigration to the US. And I think we continue to ensure that as the nation's capital, we're a great place to live and raise your family, and sort of a safe and strong city to be a part of. And Mayor Bowser has made that clear, and will continue to do so.
All right, and so I think you were here when Mr. Haviland, who was one of the public witnesses, was pointing out that he was pleased with the symbolism that we had displayed regarding the violations of human rights in Ukraine and in Israel. And he was very upset that we were not aware of or did not respond to the situation with the Iranian young lady. I think her hair was cut or something to that effect. I don't know all the details. And that we had not responded to the situation in Gaza. And in other words, I gather Mr. Haviland is saying that he wants us to respond to all international situations, as opposed to, as he felt, maybe we were picking and choosing, or we just happened to have stumbled into the more popular activities. Is there any thought given at the EOM as to how we respond, or should we respond, or is our response of value on the international, I guess, circuit?
Yeah, great question. I think the way to think about this is, Mayor Bowser has extolled or just talked about our DC values over time in the city, and we time to time need to remember them. And one of those is that we're a city that prides itself on our diversity, and we welcome community members from all over the globe. And we do so, with those 170 embassies that I talked about, but also just because we happen to be the nation's capital. And so, the Capitol building and some of our federal landmarks attract new residents to America. And we pride ourselves on being a city that where everybody can come and live together and go to school and find a great job and raise their family. And we'll continue to make sure that we do that going forward. And to your question, other cities, other capitals of countries across the globe. We have sister city relationships. They look to Washington, D.C. for policies that we're implementing and how we are kind of navigating different challenges. I am proud to say that I think we're doing a great job and we'll continue to do that. To the other aspects of that question, I think that we're going to always focus on how best to ensure that our residents, our businesses, and visitors feel safe and secure and valued in our town. And that's how we will continue to navigate difficult policy questions going forward.
All right, and so you've made it clear that some consideration is given to the nature of the policy, as opposed to it being picking and choosing those that are most popular or easy to back. All right, Mr. Havlin, I hope you have your answer, and thank you very much for that. So what is the role of EOM in coordinating the city's public safety situation? And I ask because we have in the city administrator's office, there was a position, building blocks coordinator, Linda Harper position, and it was responsible for pulling all the agencies together on I assumed, a daily basis as it related to responding to the situations that we find in our community. It included not just public safety, perhaps, but more so the other agencies that could move in on a community. I believe at that time, originally, we were moving in on a community, making sure the trash was picked up, making sure the roads were fixed, all of that. And since then, I believe we moved to looking at families, those in harm's way, those that were involved in strife in the community, and trying to make sure that they had the resources that they need. And I was wondering if with I believe it's Mr. Rodriguez, Chris Rodriguez, who is in the city administrator's office now, is that kind of like one of his functions? I'm just wondering if that position is anchored now, because it seemed that it was such an important position.
So I think the best way to think about the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, they work put into the Office of the City Administrator's office by the council, I believe, but work most closely with the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice. And so I think that'll be a great question for the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice. In terms of the Assistant City Administrator, also a previous role that I served in, that is akin to sort of a deputy mayor of a cluster. And so the responsibility of the Assistant City Administrator is to coordinate with our internal services functions. So the Office of Contracting and Procurement, Office of the Chief Technology Officer, the Department of General Services, and DCHR, DC Human Resources, among a number of others, to make sure that they've got someone to report up to in the Wilson Building to help coordinate and prioritize resources and programming.
All right, well, thank you very much. And I really look forward to meeting with Mr. Rodriguez, because a lot of what you described is right there. And or at least the committee that I chair is very concerned with a lot of this, that we feel that committee works for the rest of the government. And so coordinating with them would make a lot of sense. So thank you for that. So this is a big question. How does the mayor decide what public safety issues are most pressing?
Do you mind repeating that question?
Okay,
Thanks.
I'm asking, how does the mayor decide what public safety issues are most pressing? Is there an overarching strategic plan? Or is there reaction to public outcry? Trying to get a sense of how do we manage the day-to-day, but as we go forward in this, public safety fight, is it being materialized by the way individuals respond to public safety issues in their community? Or is there like this plan, this strategy, like we start at 0 and we want to get to 1,000 and we're now at 810 and, we're moving up. Just trying to understand how are we approaching the fight, the battle?
I think it's obviously there's a super nuanced answer to that question. And one of the things that I know that you've heard Mayor Bowser talk about is really our ecosystem, right? So there's, we're always looking at sort of each of the different nodes of the public safety ecosystem, how things are going. Are things moving the way that we intended them to? Whether that's prevention, whether that's efforts of our law enforcement agencies, whether that's with our prosecutors or the courts. We're always looking to make sure that we are utilizing sort of all the nodes of that ecosystem in the way that they're intended, but also to ensure that our streets are safe. And so when we see something that is misaligned, needs course correcting, whether that's by law or internal administrative processes, and or we need community interaction. I think those are, we're constantly looking at sort of data and numbers and hearing from people that are impacted, as well as those that are, boots on ground, doing the daily work. Kind of always looking for ways to make sure that we're focused on trends and ensuring that that ecosystem is functioning the way that it is intended to.
And so to that end, when we think about the report that the U.S. Attorney for DC indicated that not all of the information, the crimes that were brought to his office attention has he done something with. Is there something that the EOM, that the mayor can do in your estimation that would move that system forward? In other words, increase the number of, I'll say, closer look at the crimes that have been committed or alleged to have been committed and move forward with greater prosecution.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, sort of those are all different kind of parts of the ecosystem. And so where we see kind of misalignment or where things are not moving, and so therefore our kind of goal of ensuring that our safe and, our streets are safe and strong is not being felt by the community, then we're always going to look to see if there's anything that needs tweaking. So yeah, very much so.
All right, well, we talked a minute or two ago about the DC Attorney General, being elected. And is it your feeling, your understanding that because that position is elected, that it's a little more tedious in getting more action from that, when I shouldn't say more action, but getting a better understanding of how we hold um, juvenile offenders accountable for their bad action?
I think the best way to answer that question would be to sort of harken back to the conversation that we had on statehood, and the sort of uniqueness of DC government. I would hope that, and one of the conversations that we have oftentimes when we're educating members of Congress, members of the federal government, we don't operate like how you see things operate on Law and Order, for instance. So we don't have an executive that has direct line of sight to the functioning of their law enforcement as well as their prosecutors. That's unique. And so we, I think, should always strive to make sure that we are doing as much as we can to coordinate. And if there's anything that is detracting from that coordination, then we should be, everyone in Washington, D.C. should be working to increase that coordination.
Thank you very much for that. And I remember you mentioned a few times earlier that what we do in the District of Columbia is governed by the laws, and the laws are the domain, for the most part, of the legislative body.
Thank you for that.
Okay. The mayor released a new sexual harassment policy in October 2023. How is the agency assuring that the information is communicated? I know there were requirements to show, there was a process in place, but has there been any additional activities from the EOM that would inform us that the mayor is pushing very hard for there to be no nonsense whatsoever throughout the agencies and their accountability? And included in that, I want to know if you have information that could inform us as to how the quote unquote independent agencies are handling this matter and if they are following the mayor's order.
You, as you have kind of alluded to in the last conversation, under a mayor's order, the mayor can really only, she can direct the executive, and we hope that everyone will follow. Sometimes that is not the case with independent agencies, but that's always the hope. And so, and we'll continue to ensure that, that what the mayor has laid out is a path for anyone that is feeling the need to, anyone that making sure that we've actually got a workplace that is free of sexual harassment. That is the goal. And so anyone that has a complaint should feel free to come forward to any sexual harassment officer throughout the government to get that complaint addressed. That is the intention of the mayor's order. Now, you and I both know that there are many other channels for somebody that is feeling, it needs to report any type of harassment. There's multiple other channels for folks to do that. But what the mayor wanted to make clear is that this is a priority for hers and of hers. And we want to make sure that everybody understands there's zero tolerance for sexual harassment in DC government.
All right, well, thank you for that. To your knowledge, have any employees, DC employees, been encouraged to resign in FY '23 or '24? You may not know the answer, but it's on my list of questions as it relates to this.
Do you mind asking that one more time? I apologize.
Okay, to your knowledge, have any employees, DC government employees, been encouraged to resign either in FY '23 or '24 to date? I don't know. Yes, or be separated because of substantiated allegations.
I'm not aware of any.
Okay, thank you. I gotta speed it up. I promise to get you out. Does the EOM employ interns from the Marion Barry Summer Youth Leadership Program?
You know, yes, and I've had some wonderful interns that actually I get to work with today. To tell you the truth, one of the members of our communications team started out as an intern, and today they are a member of our team, and that's the path and the model that I hope kind of for everyone. And I'm so excited that you asked about that because the deadline to apply for the Summer Youth Employment Program, the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program, is rapidly approaching, and I
Yes.
believe it's next Wednesday.
Yes, it is. I think it is next, the 7th, I believe, yes. Well, you answered this question. I wanted to ask you if past participants in the program enjoyed the program time with you, and do the interns generally stay in DC government? So you've already kind of answered that. Thank you very much. You were ahead of us on that. So how does the EOM work to ensure that its policies are designed to account for the needs of the district as a whole, including marginalized communities that do not have a loud voice and when it comes to advocating for themselves?
I think the best way to answer that is that we are, I think we're probably front and center in terms of an agency that would receive any idea or concern from any number of communities, but we specifically have directors and agencies aligned with a number of different communities that I think the DC Council over the years and the Mayor's Office have found to be the most in need of that. So the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs and all of the agencies that fall under that, I think a lot of those offices were created by council over time to do just that and make sure that we were on top of understanding concerns and then also responding to them.
Okay, what does the mayor's office view as the most significant barrier to racial equity in DC? Or are there several or a variety?
That's a great question. The most significant, I don't know if I would want to square in on one. I think that we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. And like I talked about before, providing a fair shot, ensuring that we've got pathways to the middle class, and ensuring that we're fighting for the middle class has been paramount to Mayor Bowser's administration sort of throughout the 10 years that she served as mayor and the 7 years that she was on the council. And we'll continue to do that, whether that's providing for more affordable housing, being bullish on setting numbers of affordable housing that we're able to create. In fact, I think we're leading the region right now in producing that housing, which is remarkable. I think if you were to look around, and as we do the U.S. Council, or the U.S. Conference of Mayors and other umbrella groups with local elected officials, we really are kind of setting the stage on how to go about producing that affordable housing. When it comes to education, we're doing more more for our young people through high impact tutoring making sure that we're catching up from delays caused by the pandemic, but then also leaning into such things as partnerships with our HBCUs and ensuring that we're kind of helping create pathways to opportunity, both within government and in the private sector. We also, we have some great news when it comes to some of the violence that we saw last year coming down. And so all of those things combined help to make sure that we're doing better for all and leveling the playing field.
Thank you. You didn't mention seniors, so if you're listening, and I know that you are, didn't mean to slight you. You're in
think
all of that.
Everything I just talked about is for young people, is for people that would call themselves middle age, which I think all of us do, and then also seniors.
Well, I must say, in all fairness, the most recent information that was released about middle class sets the middle class at a very high standard now. It's unbelievable. And so I guess when you say middle class, you're still thinking a little bit middle class as it relates to our AMI, or?
I actually think it's more so as to how people would self-describe themselves. And what I would argue is when you poll Americans, but also Washingtonians, a lot of us are in there, and proudly so. So it doesn't, those numbers actually don't really matter.
All right, okay, all right. So how does the EOM retain qualified staff? What do you offer? I heard a couple of days ago that there are offices around the, even in Washington, DC, where you walk in and there's a buffet, a breakfast buffet, hot lunch at lunchtime, just the starters, happy hour, things that people are doing to retain individuals. When I sat on a panel with the state senator from Utah at the National Conference of State Legislators, he said in Utah, and he pointed out, and I did not know this, that most of the people live within 5 miles of the interstate, to the right and the left. I was surprised, but he said, we're doing everything we can to get people to come back in the office and to work. He says, so we offer all kinds of things. We'll even, not only do you get a gym, but we'll even have uniforms for you to wear, workout uniforms. So I'm just asking, in jest, of course, what do you do?
There's a really important thread that has kind of gone throughout our conversation, and just sort of the importance of statehood is quite critical to this conversation. So we know that we have to at times adhere to some laws surrounding federal use of federal funds. And one of those fun ones is making sure that we don't spend dollars on food for staff. And so we can do so for training, and we can do so for certain exceptions, especially when there's a sort of a public interest involved. But I have a member of our team that is a Gen Zer. And that was definitely top of mind, and something that we could do to encourage more young people, especially, to contemplate a public service job at the moment, where, I think you kind of laid out that challenge earlier today, council member, kind of making sure that we're resetting in sort of this new normal, the importance of public servants. And I think that is really, when I look at the commonality of the folks that I get the opportunity to come in and work with and work on behalf of Mayor Bowser, we're all interested and we're all mission driven. We are all folks that want to make sure that our community, our neighbors, our families are able to, take advantage of that fair shot, build better opportunities for our future. And it's lovely, right? It's a wonderful group of people to kind of wake up and come to work hard with every single day. And I continue to look for, and I want to make sure, because you pointed this out before, it doesn't really matter, see whether you're a senior or not, but I've found that folks in kind of older generations understand that public service, right? We heard, some of us heard President Kennedy's challenge to actually serve, and President Obama levied a similar type of challenge to serve. And I think all of us could use a refresher, to tell you the truth, in this post-pandemic world of the sort of kind of amazing kind of accomplishment and feeling you have to work on a team of people that are moving the ball forward when it comes to sort of bettering our neighborhoods and our communities. And that's always my hope, is that we find that young person or that person that's interested in a public servant position to come and join our team, because that's really what makes the morale great in a team that works so hard.
Well, thank you. And as you were speaking, a couple of thoughts crossed my mind. And let me start with this. As we're considering what government looks like, and we're getting close to, I think it's March 10th, the mayor's new order that says return to the office an additional day. Most of our agencies are out, I guess, what do they call it? Teleworking, 2 days a week. And so it'll return to only 1 day a week. Are we also thinking about how that's going to shape the landscape? Does that mean landscape of our real estate? Does it really say that the 600 buildings that you mentioned where we have employees, will that continue to be 600 buildings, or will we shrink it to 550? Will we maybe consider daycare in some of the larger buildings, creating a daycare, center within the buildings? I'm trying to think of how we sweeten the pie, and at the same time, we come back to a more traditional work environment. Has all of that been considered? And I ask because the whole issue of return to the office is in our committee, and we want to do justice to the issue. And I know that we have so many employees that are not DC residents, and we tried to make employees residency requirement years ago, and it didn't work. We ended up in court. So I want to understand just what does that mean for us as we're thinking about the 10th of March and moving forward, and how do we get there as smoothly as possible?
Yeah, and I know that you have had a great conversation with the director of DCHR, whose
Yes.
Agency is leading the charge and
Yes.
helping agencies come up with their telework plans. I think you'll be happy to know that at the Executive Office of the Mayor, we are DC residents. And so we understand the importance of collaborating and communicating and really sort of that water cooler conversation, right? That just allows for an idea to kind of be conceived and
Yeah,
then really
that's right.
blossom because you're just going on a
Yeah,
walk to grab
yeah.
coffee. That type of innovation and coordination, one could argue is lost when you're not face to face. And so we actually just had a conversation with our senior team, and we're very focused on. I would argue that, and this is really the truth, is 60% of the government never was able to or 40% of the government was never able to telework anyway.
Right.
They are required to report to a workstation every day, and there's no work for them to do at home. And those are the when you're looking at a 37,000 person workforce, you want to make sure again that you're creating a fair and equitable workspace for everybody. And it's so therefore I think the mayor is affording us a lovely benefit for those that are able to telework, and that is that there's a day a week that you're able to do that if your manager is able to make that possible. But there's 40% of DC government never went home during the pandemic. So
All right. And so am I hearing that it would be office by office determination as to how you would put in your hours?
yeah, I think telework continues to be a benefit.
Okay.
And the benefit was recently changed by mayor's order to allow for offices and teams that could telework are able to, as set by management, telework up to 1 day a week. But
All right.
there's going to be teams that, they can't
Okay.
actually telework.
So does that mean that we might decrease the space that we're utilizing for offices?
Well, if you think about it, if there's only 1 day a week that people are able to telework, there's not really a chance to hotel per se.
All right. So my idea of having some alternatives like daycare, buffets of breakfast and things like that are not likely to materialize. I just want the public to know that.
Well, I think we legally cannot provide that buffet. But to your question about childcare, I mean, over the past decade, we've done a lot to create additional childcare seats. And I was just thinking about one childcare center in the rec center at Arthur Capper this morning. So there are a number of childcare providers. And, the best thing about being a DC resident, and if you've got a growing family, is we also have free pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 available as well. So, it's just another incentive to come on in.
Okay. One of the things that I spoke to a couple of other committees about, particularly the DMPED, is how are we thinking about the future of the city? Are we thinking about it where downtown will continue to be the downtown, the business hub? Or are we thinking about in a more holistic manner, the various neighborhoods? We know that our residents are not glued to just downtown. They want to have amenities in their neighborhood where they live. And so I was wondering if the mayor is giving any thought to looking beyond just downtown or just the commercial corridors that we're most familiar with to see if we're going to try and expand commercial corridors in other parts of the city.
I think the goal that Mayor Bowser laid out, and I have it here, is, DC's comeback plan, where we laid out sort of 3 pillars. And the reason that DC's comeback plan was so focused on the downtown is because sort of that is the area where we've got the majority of our commercial office space, and where our and therefore has been our revenue driver in the city. And so in order to do all the things that we hope to do, whether that's in the education space or health and human services space and or growing other commercial corridors, it's really dependent on our comeback downtown. And so the 3 pillars of the plan: changing spaces, filling spaces, bringing people to the city, is what we've been very focused on in order to do all the things that we know our residents are looking for in the years to come. And so to your question, in fact, a number of not only did the downtown bid, but the Golden Triangle bid, and a number of stakeholders came together and last week released the Downtown Action Plan, which actually looks at the downtown, which is, when we say downtown anymore in DC, it's a very big, expansive space. And so they really kind of came up with some very thoughtful, targeted ideas to make sure that we were refueling and re-energizing the downtown, so as to do all the other things in the city across the wards that we have not only come to expect, but also anticipate. And so that, I think, and also the Office of Planning released the Downtown DC Public Realm Plan last week as well. This operates sort of in tandem with the Downtown Action Plan and really helps to think about sort of the different nodes downtown and how we ought to kind of use them and do such things as converting office space into residential. So we're creating even more neighborhoods down here as well. So those are things that we're focused on, and that is so as to kind of reignite the revenue streams of our city to create an even better comeback and city going forward.
I know that the mayor, thank you for that. I know that the mayor has, it's creating the task forces. And I know that the task forces will be putting together the strategic plan. I'm just wondering if you have at your fingertips, I'll phrase it that way, any idea as to what is our timeline for accomplishing many things? One, to make sure that we are moving on revitalizing downtown. Make sure that we are moving on our schools continuing to show proficiency at a higher rate. I'm just wondering about the big items, the big areas of concern that people have, like the goals that we set for housing, more housing units, and we're very close to meeting the 35,000. We're at 33,000, I believe. So I'm just wondering if you have those kinds of goals, and if you can say what your so-called deadline is, or your preliminary deadline that you have set.
I think there's a few different questions in there, but when you say that the mayor's created a lot of task forces, I think maybe you're referring to the Chinatown Gallery Place task force.
Yes.
So just one task force to look at sort of one node downtown that is of particular concern to kind of all of us as we think about the future. But the rest of the items that I just shared, there's action that's being taken now. So housing in downtown is one. We've seen more office to residential conversions in Washington, D.C. Per capita than any other major city in the U.S. And so we are already, it's not, there's nothing that is waiting on a task force. There is action that is kind of happening today, is what I would argue.
I kind of mixed the message.
Okay,
I
okay.
was really speaking of, as an example, you have the task forces, and by time certain, you want to yield some results from the task forces.
Mhm.
On the other front, you've had a few years to obtain or reach the goal of 35,000 new housing units. And so you're doing that. And so my question is, are there goals like that, big goals that relate to a major subject area that you're working on? Like, for instance, we hear about a climate, and do we have goals related to the climate and how we're going to um, make it healthier in the District of Columbia for residents, by the year 2035 or the year 2045 or the year 2030. And climate is just an example. So I'm just trying to explore, are there other things that the public should be aware that we're working on to improve the quality of life for all? And so it's a very universal kind of question. And, one I just thought, given the tenor of your presentation today, that it was fitting in. I didn't know that I would get an answer, but I said I would ask
Love it.
anyway.
I love it.
Okay.
I think the best way to talk about that in the short time that we have would be that actually every year Mayor Bowser publishes a progress report that lays out kind of what we are doing with the budget and points to goals that have been established and goals that have been accomplished. And that can be found at progress.dc.gov. And not only can you find the current year's progress report, but you can find the progress report from the last 10 and really kind of see how the needle has been moved. And really, as we look at this budget, we're all sort of being mindful of a number of different kind of projects that have moved over time. One of them, just as an example, comes to mind is when the mayor first came into office, having been a ward council member where you hear a lot about streets and sidewalks and alleys, wanted to make sure that we were putting in place a plan to turn our streets from get us to great, essentially. And with really thoughtful process and some targeted resource, we have now moved sort of street quality to all green. We were looking at it when we came into office as sort of all red, and she's really kind of made it's given us the ability to kind of repave the majority of our roads, which is just kind of neat to be able to see. I don't think everybody has the privilege of serving a three-time an elected official that's been kind of reelected to 3 terms as mayor. And it's just kind of amazing to see what you're able to do with those, 10 plus years in office. So that's exciting to look at, and we'll make sure that that's sort of front and center in this next progress report.
All right. And I think you told us progressreport.dc.gov.
I think it's progress.dc.gov. It's not. Okay, we'll look for the right
Okay, all right.
thing right now.
Can you talk a minute about the contingency funds and how the EOM used them in FY23 and maybe to date in 24?
Sorry, it is progressreport.dc.gov.
All right, thank you.
Sorry about
Okay.
that. I forgot a word. Progressreport.dc.gov. The EOM, the Executive Office of the Mayor, has not used contingency funds in FY23 and 24.
In 23?
No, in FY23 or 24.
All right,
Yep.
thank you, thank you. What is the current status of all of the reserve funds that we have? I have to go to the CFO. I got it.
The
All
the
right.
CFO actually just released their ACFR, the annual comprehensive financial
yes.
review, and all of those data points are definitely in there. I don't know if I can rattle them off on the top of my head. I'm sorry about that, but
That's okay.
okay.
One of the things that we are doing in this committee is making it very clear that the EOM knows all, does all, and is everywhere. And so therefore, we're bringing up these little,
I hope I'm passing.
you're doing very well. Hold on a minute. All right. Well, we want to thank you very, very much for being with us today. We've enjoyed learning more about the EOM, and we want to thank Ms. Parker and Mr. Walker and staff, their team members for being here. And I want to thank our public witnesses as well. In fact, if you have any additional thoughts from the public or within government and would like to submit written testimony regarding the performance of the EOM, please upload it to the hearing management system at dccouncil.gov, or you may email it to ceal@dccouncil.gov. The hearing record will close in 10 business days from today, closing on Thursday, the 14th of March at 5 p.m. And I do urge those public witnesses to make sure we get a copy of their testimony. And again, I want to thank you very, very much for today, and you're able to make that 5:30 meeting. So this concludes the hearing for today, and the time is now 4:45 p.m. on February 29th, 2024, and the meeting is adjourned. And thanks to everyone again.